Hi, and welcome back to Roam Away from Home. Today we're going to talk about something that actually was really hard for us to get started with, boondocking. This is so critical to any full-time RV experience. If you're on the road full-time, there are going to be times where you boondock, regardless if you want to or not. Now, in our case, boondocking is by far the best way to experience full-time RV life. You get to find beautiful locations like this for free. And we're going to share our top 5 lessons for boondocking. We learned these the hard way, and we want to make them easier for you. We're going to start with our number 1 lesson: not all boondocking sites are free. So once you find your spot, you have it locked in and everything, and you're ready to head to that destination, you're going to want to make sure that it's not in a fee area, or if it is in a fee area, that you actually pay the fees. There are several spots that require extra permits or special allowances to let you go on the land. Part of this is to maintain the land for other RVers and campers. Another part of it is to educate you on the importance of preserving the environment in that area. The easiest way to find out if you're in an area that requires extra permits or fees is by checking the reviews online. So go through the apps like iOverlander and freecampsites.net and Campendium and look if any other reviewers mention any sort of permit. That's usually how we find out if you need a permit, but that is also the easiest way to plan ahead for a permit. The second area is by checking the website of the registered agency that takes care of the land. So maybe it's BLM, Bureau of Land Management, maybe it's National Forest Services, or even State Trust Land or something like that. You can go onto their website, look up those GPS coordinates, and see if it mentions any sort of fees. I'm gonna be honest, a lot of their websites are not great, and they don't really give you good information on whether or not you have to pay the fee and how much the fee is. In those cases, we always call the ranger station ahead of time, or whatever agency is governing and taking care of that body of land. Always call ahead of time if you're uncertain. Just ask, is it free? Is there a fee? Where can I put the fee? A lot of times on these boondocking sites that do require fees, they have drop boxes close to the campsites. So they'll have actual fire rings and they'll have picnic tables and stuff, but it's first come, first serve, and it's kind of like an honor system. They have rangers come by and check to make sure that you're paid, but they're not there every day checking on you. In those cases, you just grab a little envelope from the slip, put your money in. Usually it's cash or check only, so make sure to pay attention to that and have that on hand as a full-time RVer. We actually carry checks and use them more now than we did when we lived in a house. So you're gonna pay that way. Other times you'll need a permit that might actually have to get mailed to you ahead of time. We found out that by calling the ranger station or the agency that's in charge of the land ahead of time and asking about these fees, you can often get them in person from the ranger station. This is also where you want to consider, is it worth paying the daily fee or an annual fee? Many of these sites offer annual and daily fee options. The annual fee is probably going to be worth it if you're a full-time RVer, because these spots that do charge just a little bit of money are usually even more beautiful than the totally free spots. Not always, but a lot of the times they are. If you find that there's no permit or no fee required for that site, that's totally fine too. Now you know you can go in and you're comfortable enjoying this free spot. Some permits, very few, but some are actually educational permits. They are free, but you have to go through some sort of education and take some sort of pledge online in order to access that area, and you will need that permit with you to prove that you've done that, especially if you get stopped by any sort of agent. In those cases, you're going to need service, so plan ahead of time to get service so that you can watch these online educational videos. If you want these 5 boondocking lessons accessible anytime that you want, just hit the link below and you'll be able to download our PDF. Our second tip for boondocking comes from a pretty expensive lesson that we had to learn. State and federal laws vary, and if you're in a state like Arizona and you're on federal land, you have to abide by the federal laws, even if you are 2 feet away from the state-federal border. And it's really important as full-time RVers to be aware of what those laws are and how they vary. You will have to look some of them up, especially if you're on state land, because they vary so much and even vary by county. Our third lesson is probably what people are most afraid of when they think of boondocking. You can't control your neighbors, and that is okay. So boondocking is usually free or very low cost with those permits and fees that we talked about earlier. And so they bring in all types of people. You'll have some interesting neighbors at some point or another. And that is okay. You just can't control them. It's first come, first serve. All types of people are allowed, which is awesome because you meet so many great different people. But it also means that maybe there are some people that you don't necessarily want to be your neighbors. When that happens, the most important thing that you can do is trust your gut. Trust your intuition and trust your instincts. As you go into full-time RVing more and more and more, or as you're boondocking more and more, you'll learn, okay, when do I get a bad vibe or a good vibe, and what instinct should I trust? If you have any bad instinct or any bad impression of your neighbors, just leave. So some people might be down on their luck and they need a little bit more space to be by themselves. This actually happened to us when we were out boondocking in Sedona. Not a single soul for as far as we could see, basically. But we could tell that some people were gonna pull in like really far away. Someone pulls up right next to us, and they open the side of their van and they start blasting a self-help tape, like good for him, getting his mind right. But he blasted it for 5 hours straight, and it was the same tape repeating every hour. By hour 2, we went on a walk to scope out other sites. This is another tip. You don't have to leave the whole area to actually get away from a bad neighbor. You can just go down the road and you're plenty distance between you and them, and you don't have to worry about them a single moment longer. So we went and we scoped out sites because we honestly couldn't take it. The music, it was so loud right into our site, and with no need. We packed up in under 10 minutes our whole site, and we moved down the road to a beautiful site that had perfect views of Sedona Mountains and tons of hiking trails connected to it. So in the end, we actually found a better site because we had a bad neighbor. This lesson, the whole key is, if you don't like your neighbor, leave. Usually if you have a bad neighbor, it's because something about them is unpredictable to you and you feel uneasy around them. It's not worth confronting someone that is unpredictable to you. Just pack up your stuff and leave. And again, this has only happened one time that we had a neighbor where we felt like we had to leave. Other than that, we usually meet some of the coolest people, and they show us all these different great places nearby, and we share exchanges of our journeys and our stories and other people that we might know, and we connect online. So it's just really great. You can meet some lifelong friends boondocking, but those bad neighbors, just get on out of there. Lesson number 4 comes from one of the craziest times where we had to go to our plan E of boondocking. When boondocking, always have a plan B and C and probably D. And this is because boondocking often takes you on roads that are off trail. So sometimes they could be washed away in a storm. Other times the road is closed due to weather like snow or a flood or something like that. And sometimes it's just closed because trees fell and they never repaired the road, so you can't even get to that spot anymore. Always have a plan B, C, and D. How you can do this is, as you're looking up your site, look up nearby spots as well. So there was one time that we actually did our plan B. The very first time we had to go to our plan B is we went to this boondocking spot that somehow had decent reviews. I really don't know how. Well, this was the most barren place ever, and I mean, there was nothing beautiful about it, and it was right off the 10. So we quickly changed to our plan B and found what is currently our favorite spot that we've ever boondocked. So that was we stayed there for 2 weeks because we loved it so much. So again, the plan Bs, they actually can work out. But having a plan C and D is equally important. So as you're going, pick out spots. They don't have to be your number one choice. Obviously, you want to go to your plan A. That's the whole goal. But pick out some other options. And they can even be a paid for site. Just know that you have to plan the timing. Because you have these different plans, we always recommend showing up to your boondocking spot earlier in the day so that you have plenty of daylight to either switch gears or set up your site, scope out your neighbors, whatever it is. What happened to us when we had to go to our plan E is we actually went to a place in National Forest where we had boondocked in this National Forest before, and we assumed that there would be more boondocking in this other area of the National Forest. Well, it turns out, for whatever reason, this National Forest only allowed boondocking on the weekends, and it was Wednesday, and they only allowed boondocking Thursday through Sunday. That is one of the most specific rules that we've ever encountered, by the way, and that usually is not the case. But for this specific place, that's what it was. There wasn't a lot nearby, but luckily we had a plan B. We go to the plan B, well, it turns out it's closed for the season. We go to plan C, it's right off the interstate, and we're like, oh, do we really want to go here? We go to plan D, and keep in mind, at this point, we have been driving for, I don't think, like 5.5 hours that day. We go to plan D, and it's actually decent, and we thought, okay, if we go down the road more and we don't find this next site, we will go back here to this location. But it was pretty crowded with a lot of different RVers, and we like to have more isolation like this beautiful area. So we continued, and we pulled up on our plan E with just barely enough sunlight to be able to take the dogs out for a walk, go to the bathroom, and we made some quesadillas. And we were, I think, total drive time that day, when our plan A was only an hour and a half away, was about 7 hours. So always have these backup plans. We ended up staying at a spot that was really cool. We saw wild donkeys, we hiked to a lake, it was beautiful. We actually even hosted friends there. So it was an awesome spot, but make sure you have those backup plans, because a lot of times in these boondocking areas, you don't have service. And if you're trying to plan on the fly, you might actually stay somewhere where you're uncomfortable just because you can't find the next spot. Another reason that you're gonna wanna have multiple backup plans is because your rig might not actually be able to make it to the spot. So regardless of closures or anything like that, or weather, it could be that your rig cannot make it for a variety of reasons. One could be that the weight limit on a bridge that you have to cross is too low. So maybe a Sprinter van, Class B, and small Class C's can make it, truck campers, travel trailers, whatever, but your big Class A, your big Class C won't be able to make it over that bridge. Know the weight of your rig before you head out for that reason. It could also be a height restriction, so there are trees or overhanging limbs or a bridge or a tunnel or something like that that's too short for your rig. Again, a pop-up or a travel trailer might be able to easily make it, but those big fifth wheels, Class A's and Class C's, they're not going to quite make it under that tunnel. And lastly, your rig could be actually too long to make turns. This happened in Yosemite. No rigs over 45 feet long. That's pretty easy to get to if you have a truck plus trailer. So you're gonna need to have a backup plan of how you can either get there by going around or something like that, but you might not actually be able to make these hairpin turns. And here we are, lesson 5. So this one's actually kind of a fun part of boondocking. You might be off-grid, and you should plan for it. Don't wait until you get there to realize, oh shoot, I don't have service. A couple things that we always do before we get out of service. One, we look up the service on OpenSignal to see if anyone else in that area actually has service at that boondocking site. You might not. If we don't see any little service notifications or any kind of data on that area, then we simply assume that it's going to be off-grid. So when you're planning for no service, there are a few things you should do. One, let someone know where you're going. This is really key, especially if you're traveling solo or something happens to you while you're at that site. You're going to want people to know how to get to you to help you out. Maybe you break your leg on a trail or something, who knows what it is. But let someone know where you're going, someone that you trust, in case something happens, and let them have an estimate of when you plan to come back. It could be a little bit longer than you expect, so say, we're planning on coming back Saturday, but if we love it, we're gonna come back Monday. If you don't hear from us by Monday, then call the police, like something happened to us. You should always do that, just to let people know. We've seen too many stories of people go missing just because they're off-grid. The second thing that we do is download music and movies and anything we want to do offline. So, if you have an iPhone, automatically apps now delete their data and you have to re-download the app if you don't use it for a certain period of time. If you have games on your phone that you like playing, you should make sure that those apps are downloaded. Download your movies offline on Netflix, Hulu, HBO, whatever it is, Disney Plus, all of the apps. Anytime that we have decent Wi-Fi service, we actually take a break and download different shows offline. It's just nice to have podcasts as well. We download a lot of podcasts offline so we can watch and listen to different things. We also download a lot of music offline. This is important for a few reasons. One is that you can listen to it while you're driving, making your drive very enjoyable. And then 2, you can listen to it once you arrive at your destination. I know some people don't like to listen to music camping, but when you're living in your RV and that is your whole life, to try and not have music ever, for us, would never work. So we have music and we obviously play it respectfully, but it's really nice to have as we're cooking, packing up, doing all the kinds of things that you do in RV life. A key part of being off-grid and what makes RV life so awesome compared to other types of outdoorsy lifestyles is that you plan to be self-contained. So bring enough water, fresh water plus extra drinking water on the side in case something happens to your freshwater tank, so that you can stay hydrated while you're completely out of service. Especially if something happens like a flat tire or something like that, where you're gonna actually have to extend your stay unexpectedly. Bring enough food, Bring canned food and non-perishable items that are shelf stable so that if something happens to your cooler or your fridge, you have enough food to sustain yourself and keep you going throughout the remainder of your time at that spot. You should also make sure that you have some extra things in your RV to get you out of a situation. So maybe a tire plug or a bicycle so you can ride your bike to get service, or any sort of vehicle, hiking shoes, stuff for your dog. So make sure you have enough dog food, or pet food if you have a cat or any other. We actually just saw an RV pig, so whatever animals you have in your rig, make sure you have enough food for them to have at least for that length of stay, plus a few extra days. Basically plan for at least 3 to 5 days extra when you're doing your shopping trips and stuff, especially if you're far off grid. And if you want to know how to find beautiful spots like this and really enjoy full-time RV life, subscribe and we'll be sharing all these tips with you, including more details on this specific spot. Your thing is too long!